Everyone, and welcome. I'm Amy Landau, the Director of Education and Interpretation at the Fowler Museum. The Fowler at UCLA acknowledges our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino and Tongva peoples. It is an honor for me to introduce tonight's program, which is dedicated to the collaborative efforts between Destination Crenshaw and UCLA. This program has been co-designed with our distinguished guests with the intention of sharing information about this pioneering initiative while shining a light on opportunities for public engaged scholarship, past, present, and future. Before we begin, a few technical notes. Once the screen sharing begins, I encourage you to click View Options and then go to side-by-side mode. So the video feed doesn't cover any of the presentations you're about to see. If you have any questions during our program, please submit them through the Q&A function found at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We will do our very best to answer the questions, as many questions as possible. It is now my pleasure to welcome Sylvia Forney, the Shirley and Ralph Shapiro Director of the Fowler Museum. And I turn the mic over to Sylvia.
Thank you, Amy. On behalf of the Fowler Museum at UCLA, I'm really honored to welcome Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Darnell Hunt, who has served as an advisor to Destination Crenshaw since 2017. Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Hunt is a renowned scholar of race, media, and culture. He earned his AB in journalism at the University of Southern California, his MBA at Georgetown University, and his Master's of Arts and Doctorate in Sociology at UCLA. Prior to his appointment as UCLA EVC and Provost, he served as Dean of the UCLA Division of Social Sciences, and before that, as Professor and Chair of the Sociology Department and Director of the Ralph J. Bunche Center for African American Studies. From 2014 to 2022, Hunt has been the lead author of UCLA's annual Hollywood Diversity Report, which provides comprehensive analysis of the employment of women and people of color in front of and behind the camera in film and television. He's a longstanding advocate for access and diversity in the entertainment industry. Hunt is committed to furthering partnerships between UCLA and Los Angeles communities through engaged scholarship that makes a meaningful difference in the lives of Angelenos. Welcome, Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Darnell Hunt.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, and thank you, Amy. It's really a pleasure to moderate today's program. The focus is on Destination Crenshaw, a massive revitalization project bringing public art, pocket parks, and small business investment to Crenshaw Boulevard in South LA. Destination Crenshaw features more than 100 public artworks and exhibits, monuments, statues, murals, augmented reality storytelling. And while making Crenshaw a major cultural destination for people from around the world, the project is dedicated to boosting local businesses and enriching the lives of area residents. I was first contacted in late 2016 by Joanne Kim, a staffer for Councilmember Marquise Harris Dawson, about the idea for Destination Crenshaw. The planned arrival of the Crenshaw Metro line create both an opportunity and a potential threat for the community. The opportunity of a revitalized local economy around the new line and the threat of gentrification that could erode both the ability of Black Angelenos to remain in the area and obfuscate its history as a Black space. While I was director of the Ralph J. Bunche Center for African American Studies at UCLA, we had completed a 5-year project on the history and contemporary conditions of Black LA with the 2010 release of an edited volume, Black Los Angeles, American Dreams and Racial Realities. Kim reached out to me to serve as an advisor to Destination Crenshaw, identifying our edited volume as a background for some of the conversations that were taking place about potential themes for a planned 1.3-mile open-air museum of Black LA history along Crenshaw, where the subway emerges from underground. I should note that several UCLA students in African American Studies, guided by colleague Professor Marcus Hunter, contributed historical and contemporary vignettes that served as additional sources of inspiration for the project. As an advisor to this project, I have witnessed the creative energies poured into Destination Crenshaw by LA's Black leadership, council members, philanthropists, artists, community activists. It's an honor for me to welcome several of them on today's panel. And so let me introduce them in alphabetical order. First up, we have Ben Caldwell. Ben is an arts educator, independent filmmaker, and member of Destination Crenshaw Community Advisory Council. He studied film at UCLA, and after teaching film and video at Howard University in Washington, D.C. from 1981 to 1984, Caldwell returned to Leimert Park and created an independent studio for video production and experimentation that became the Chaos Network, a community arts center that provides training on digital arts, media arts, and multimedia. Next up, we have Jason Foster. Jason is the president and COO of Destination Crenshaw. Previously, Foster served as the director of strategic partnerships at River LA, the organization charged with improving and revitalizing communities adjacent to the 51-mile stretch of the LA River. Foster holds a BA in Business Administration, Finance from Howard University, and an MBA from the Metropolitan College of New York, where he focused his studies on community redevelopment and small business incubation. Next up, we have Maren Hassinger. A visual artist and alumna of UCLA's Fiber Arts program, Maren Hassinger is one of the celebrated artists whose work was selected for Sankofa Park. Hassinger served as the director of the Reinhardt School of Sculpture at Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. A recipient of numerous honors, her work is in the permanent collections of the Art Institute of Chicago, Baltimore Museum of Art, Los Angeles County Museum of Art, Museum of Modern Art, NYC, and the Smithsonian's Hirshhorn Museum, among many others. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. V. Joy Simmons. Dr. Simmons is the Senior Art and Exhibition Advisor for Destination Crenshaw and a UCLA Medical School alumna. A physician at Kaiser Permanente, Los Angeles, Simmons has been a collector of contemporary African-American art for 3 decades and is currently a commissioner of the Smithsonian American Art Museum. Her extensive and growing art collection has been featured in exhibitions around the world, and her eye for spotting talent has earned her recognition in New York Magazine's The Cut, W Magazine, Ebony Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal. So after their brief presentations, I look forward to a conversation with our panelists about, first, UCLA's engagement with planning of Destination Crenshaw. Second, Destination Crenshaw as a model for establishing a new cityscape, elevating Black art and culture while promoting environmental health and economic development. And lastly, by exploring future possibilities of UCLA and Destination Crenshaw collaborations. First up, we have Jason Foster. Over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. You know, it's a wonderful opportunity to really share this project and really think about, you know, what this larger impact could potentially be. I remember years ago reaching out to you, thinking about partnerships for universities and how do we engage universities in this project to really further the kind of educational experiences coming out of this project and hopefully creating new opportunities for young leaders to see themselves in our project. So I'm just happy about sharing this message and hopefully going to see many more projects like this to come. And as the slide says, you know, Destination Crenshaw is essentially a celebration of Black Los Angeles. We are trying to build a project that really speaks to the cultural permanence of our community, right? Like, how do we improve and stay? That is essentially the question that we seek to answer with our project. Next slide. So what is it? Destination Crenshaw is a 1.3-mile cultural infrastructure project tying in community pocket parks and spaces, over 822 trees, public arts commissions, a small business technical assistance program for the 43 Black businesses along the corridor, a workforce development component for our jobs in the local trades, all to build the most dynamic expression of Black American culture in the United States. This is how we respond to years of systemic oppression and disinvestment by creating the most beautiful expression of Black people and Black space possible. Next slide. Where is it? Just south of Leimert Park in north of Hyde Park, there's a 1.3-mile section. This section was selected to be an ed-grade portion of the recently completed K-line by Metro. The community at that point really wanted to have a conversation around how we essentially respond to an opportunity. People will see our community for potentially the first time as they take the train from Expo and Crenshaw all the way to the airport. And what do we want to show them? Next slide. So the community really came together, led by Council Member Marquise Harris Dawson. When he was a leader at Community Coalition, he started conversations with community at the neighborhood level, then went to stakeholders, developed a community advisory council, next slide, that you really see come together in 2017 and start meeting quarterly, working with architects at Perkins and Will to really try to understand what are these choices that we could actually have and make to create what would essentially become the Destination Crenshaw project. Next slide. And one of the stories is really our unifying narrative. This rhizome, which you see here, is the North African stargrass. This was lifted up by the design team and the Community Advisory Council to really tell the story of Destination Crenshaw, tying in all of our legacies and all of our stories, but really pointing at the future. The North African stargrass, or the Bermuda grass in this country, was actually the bedding of slave ships. That rhizome came to our country and is now seen in all 50 states. The story of this rhizome is actually the story of migration of Black people to Los Angeles from wherever we come from, whether it's the founders of our beloved city or 10 years ago, like myself, people of African descent are really at the forefront of what Los Angeles is. But the story is, how can we actually grow where we've been planted? Next slide. So we tie in this unifying narrative to really have the architecture, the landscape, the art, the interpretive design throughout the corridor, and the metro construction seen in this story. We use remembrance design, as coined by Zena Howard at Perkins and Will, as a way to really interpret this new design by acknowledging the past, showing a new aesthetic for what this corridor could potentially be. Next slide. So how we grow where we're planted is more about than our design. It is essentially our root system. Dr. Fully Love in the book Root Shock talked about how communities of color have been disrupted, root shocked, by gentrification and displacement. It is not macro level things that we're talking about. It is a grocery store. It is a barbershop. It is a store that has neighborhood roots, has our intrinsic values intact, right? How do we keep those things that are culturally important to us invested in so that they can grow? So like the root system in a blade of Bermuda grass is actually systemic underground. If you pull up one, you pull up everything. That is what we're trying to keep intact on Crenshaw. Next slide. And so we see that through our design aesthetic, the Bermuda grass, and our shade structures and our slants in the pavement, but we'll also see it in our landscaping. Being native to Los Angeles and also Africa, we'll have stone from Africa embedded in the pavement as well, showing the migration patterns of Black people to Los Angeles. Next slide. So it'll be 2.6 miles of that streetscape along with the pocket parks that I mentioned before. We'll have 7 large-scale installations, which Ms. Joy Simmons will go over later, and unapologetically Black LA narratives that really tell the story, but also our aspirations as Black Angelenos. Next slide. And so the community impact is ultimately setting the trajectory of what's to come. There's a $30 billion public infrastructure pipeline in Los Angeles, a 1% for the arts allocation, and a value capture possibility for all the businesses and residents to be an anti-displacement measure as we improve communities that have been systemically depressed. Next slide. And so we invest in not only the construction trades with our workforce development component, but also the creative economy. And a part of our public art commissions is not just putting art up, but it's creating arts jobs, careers, growing our creative sector, because we know that the chief export of Los Angeles is Black creative capital. So we continue to do this by programs like DCR Corps, launching over 200 public arts commissions by Black artists through our project. Next slide. And so I'll pass it to Joy Simmons to talk about the public art that is underway at Destination Crenshaw.
Thank you, Jason. I've been involved with Destination Crenshaw since 2018 as part of the advisory committee, and then translated into the curatorial committee. And here we are having some of the people in Los Angeles who have a vested interest in Los Angeles, but also have a curatorial expertise to help us decide the work and making sure that this really is relevant to the Crenshaw community. Next slide. So here we are. Next slide. The long-term opportunities are the 3D statues and monuments that will be going on the boulevard at the end of 2023. Next slide. These monuments and these parks have kind of a theme and nodes going down the boulevard, starting at Crenshaw and Slauson, which is talking about improvisation, at 54th and Crenshaw, the first of Los Angeles, at 50th Street, where we have the Crenshaw Wall. We talk about the dreams of Los Angeles and Black people in Los Angeles, ending in togetherness at Sankofa Park. You'll see more as we go along. Next slide. So starting at Slauson and Crenshaw, we have Brenna Youngblood, also a UCLA graduate. She's a sculptor. She's going to do a piece, next slide, called I Am. It's relevant in our playful park that we're going to have here on Slauson and Crenshaw, but really does speak to not only the declarative statement of I am, as we've seen it as Black people, but also talk about the potential that young people can see about what I am and what I could be in this neighborhood and where they live and play. Next slide. There it is right there. Okay. Then we move to 54th and Crenshaw. Next slide. We have Mel Edwards. Most people know him as a New Yorker, but he actually went to Dorsey High School and SC. Next slide. He's going to have a chain sculpture that is going to arise from the ground as we rise here at 54th and Crenshaw with this pocket park. Next slide. Here is another view of it. So again, these things are embedded in the community for us to have these kinds of spaces for us to live and breathe and enjoy. Next slide. We're going to talk about the 50th and Crenshaw. The Crenshaw Wall is a very important landmark in our community. It has been there forever, and people and artists have really done interventions on this wall since the 70s. So this new iteration by the same RTN crew that has done the more recent mural on this wall, which is 80 feet long, is going to be quite an exciting project. We're looking forward to that. And at the top, there's going to be another parklet. Next slide. Here you see it more of in current state here. Next slide. At 50th Street, we have artist Allison Sarr, also a native Los Angeles artist. Next slide. She's going to do a yet untitled sculpture of a man and a woman in the park here at 50th Street. Next slide. I think you'll see a better view of it. There you see it where the sculptures are of a man and a woman, and they're in 60s attire, but instead of the block that you kind of see on top of their heads right now, there are going to be lots of found objects, and it's going to speak to the creativity that we have as Black people to take something that people may not think about, but be creative with it and make it something very special. Next slide. There it is again. You see the scale of it and this park that people can really appreciate this kind of work. Also at 50th Street, we have John Outerbridge. He no longer is with us, but he's a griot of the Black art community here in Los Angeles, a long time Angelino, and had been the director of the Watts Towers Art Center for many years. Here's a part of a sculpture that he did for a previous iteration at the Tijuana Art Fair, but what remains of this sculpture from 1970s is continues. The whole piece is called The Struggle Continues, and this is the remaining part. Next slide. You'll see it in the landscape of the park here. And as this ramp goes up at 50th Street, you're now able to look across the metro line and see the Crenshaw Wall. So this really serves as a focal point of this particular parklet. Next slide. Then we get to togetherness at Sankofa Park. Next one. Okay, this park is going to be 45,000 square feet. There are 7 artists in this park, starting with Charles Dixon. Here's a maquette of his California car culture. Next slide. As you see it here at the tip of Sankofa Park, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be 20-something feet tall with Sanufu figures holding up an array of cars with lights and different paint colors of these cars that really does speak to the car culture that we have in Los Angeles. Next slide. Here it is as well. You can see it's going to be quite a fantastic piece. Next slide. Our most senior artist in the park is Artist Lane, who at 94 years old is going to be doing Emerging Man for us. This 12-foot bronze sculpture will be in the back of the park, or the most northern part of the park, as you see here. Next slide. And there you see it again. And I'm going to just briefly mention this Object of Curiosity and Radiating Love by Maren Hassinger. She will talk more about this piece. Next slide. But this pink orb will just be a calming influence as part of this park. It'll have a light sensitive, reactive component to it. It will be quite the Instagrammable moment. Next slide. Here you see it again in relationship to the Artist Lane piece in the park. And again. Then we have Kehinde Wiley. Many of you will know him as the portraitist of President Barack Obama. But for us, next slide, he's going to be doing a monument, a statue of a woman on horseback in the park. I mean, we don't have that kind of equestrian, kind of monumental sculpture or statues in Los Angeles, but we will have one at Crenshaw. And now when you think about, next slide, there are schools, be it Crenshaw High School, the block behind here is another private school, View Park Prep. All of these students will be able to see this work and think about what it is like to have this kind of statue, imagine what it could spark in their creative minds. Next slide. Okay, so that's a lot of slides, but I tried to get through them all. But now I'm going to pass it on to Maren Hassinger to talk about her work.
Can you all hear me? I wanted to show you a few slides to kind of give you a background of where I'm coming from with this pink orb that will be in the park. I began working at UCLA in graduate school. I was in a course called fiber structure. I found a material called wire rope, which we know is steel cable. It's used on bridges, for example, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And I had also been really involved with nature and our life in nature, how our lives have changed as nature has changed. And so in the background on the slide that you see on the left side, you'll see a simple tree branch that I found. And below it are what look like water rivulets from a river or a stream or a quiet lake or some body of water. And this wire rope and this branch are really quite representative of my thoughts concerning our relationship to nature and our relationship to industry and the times that we're living in currently. I also was very involved with dance at one point, and there were a lot of performance pieces that I did with friends and family. And on the right, you'll see one that I did at an art gallery where many of my pieces were shown. And we did this sort of circular dance around a tree branch. Next. And then as my career advanced and I had opportunities to do shows indoors and outdoors, more permanent work, and also more performative work. I got involved with the color pink, particularly in the outdoors, because pink and green, the pink of the costumes and the papers and the green of the grass became like complementary colors. One very natural, the grass itself, and the other, the applied color that I came in with my costume and all of these pink papers, functioned in a way that helped me understand what nature is and who we are in nature. And we, although born as parts of nature, have made things which don't exactly fit in, but can be scattered like leaves and can be seen that way. So that's what these two pieces are about. Next slides. And then literally sometimes I've done pieces that deal with the nature of light and how that light affects us when shown on us and how it affects that which is around us. And again, I've employed this color pink. And it's not because pink is like, you know, a girly color. It's because pink is a special color. It highlights people in a special way. It looks incredible next to green grass and other aspects of nature. And in this particular piece, you know, people just flocked to it because they wanted to see themselves in pink light. Next slide. I've also used a lot of plastic bags, and particularly these pink plastic bags. And each bag contains a little love note that says love. And then I've blown them up with my own breath, each bag with a love note inside. I blew up with my own breath, tied them off, and then, arranged them in the various spaces that were given to me in exhibition circumstances. One was at Art and Practice on the left, and the other one was at the Baltimore Museum on the right there. Next. And so here is what I've proposed for the site. And it will be this very simple, very definitely pink sphere, larger than life size. And I just want you to experience the green of the grass, the pink of the orb, and the simplicity of the whole thing, and the humor of it. To ask yourself, what is this round thing doing in this very complex environment? And I guess it's there because why not something simple and that you can relate to everyday experience? That maybe is larger than your average toy, but I think it's my attempt to really talk about color and humor. Next slide. Okay, thank you.
Hello, how are you doing? This project has been a 10-year attempt or so to start building out what a 2030 to 2050 Leimert Park would look like. So the name says Sankofa City. Sankofa means to go hurriedly into the future, but not forget your past. So what we're doing is we want to have the past concurrent happening with the future. And also, since I'm a media person, I'm also uniting communications with that. So you can see drones flying in the sky. We want to handle those and that to be created by us and our community. Also, those vehicles that you see there, we're gonna build them in a couture way where we can build them for the fit of this community. That's the wonderful thing that's happening now. Could you change the slide, please? So what we tend to do is to engage Leimert Park and the destination Crenshaw, and we're kind of like the Sankofa City Park will really anchor along with our People Street the northern end of the destination Crenshaw and interconnect that with the wonderful theater that we have built next to us here. And what we've been doing is utilizing rapid prototyping as a means to get to deep dives into the community. And this flat pack folding metal technologies, we can do micro industries. So I can build those and build these one at a time in a storefront. And we're wanting to show that we could do that. And it's a type of a manufacturing methodology that is imbued with art. So we could have each of these be uniquely themselves, almost like rolling sculptures that could go throughout the community. We've been funded for doing this for the next 4 years. We'll be able to own our intellectual properties to teach people how to do that. We want it to be community operated, and it is. We have a brown and black team in order to do that, and which means which means Native Americans and blacks and browns are collectively working with this project. It will also, we'll be able to train people for the future technologies on how to build those. And we start from the scratch, from teaching people how to build robots themselves. And we've just been funded to do augmented virtual reality for Los Angeles. And we're also have finished 2 augmented reality and virtual meta spaces with USC helping us do those along with some of our folks from UCLA. Next slide, please. This was what really sprung this. This is People Street. We wrote a grant about, I guess, around 10 years ago on the whole idea of what a People Street would look like. And a People Street is a pocket park. And a pocket park, People Street is one of the similar to the ones that were done at Berkeley. So it's partially run by the community and also collectively run with the city. The team of us have been able to hold it for almost 12 years, and we've done all types of events. And we chose Adinkra symbols, which you see on the ground, as our springboard, of which Sankofa is one of the many symbols. And that, to me, helps spring the idea of Destination Crenshaw, of which was the next slide. And the thing I like about this next slide is you get to see my building, which is right next to the Vision Theater, but right behind it is Hollywood sign. And when I first came into this town, I started a collective project with a group called Hollywatts, where it was quite not Hollywood and quite not Watts. So that's Crenshaw, the Crenshaw district. So I thought that that covers it really well, this slide. Next slide. So one of the envisionings was to imagine what it would look like with just a little bit of tweaking. As on the roofs, you can see us planting things. And then also along Bedman, we were envisioning stalls for people to sell and do their wear, and for us to have a shuttle system that could pick people up at the metro stop, and to kind of remind people a little bit of what it would look like if it was the Grove, except instead of it being a 19th century object, we'd run them through a 21st century object to give them an idea of what autonomy looks like. And we're hopefully going to be able to run it down that whole lane from our place all the way down to Hyde Park, and vice versa as we grow out from Leimert Park toward Obama, that we could run that whole strip. We've been funded to do a 3-mile stretch, which goes from Jefferson to Hyde Park and from La Brea to Western. Next card. And this gives you an idea of how different ways it could be used. So the lower left, that could be, instead of having the gas guzzler type of vending folks, we could have electrical running ones. Also, we're building them out so they could have speaker systems on them, and they could have tops on them where they could also be DJ booths and things like that we're working on with the students. And then the other two are showing you a kind of a way that we could customize it for people to have it for their bicycles and friends to take it in and around the neighborhoods or go to the beach. Next one. That's it, right? So that will give you an idea of what we're planning for the future. It's really autonomy, and we'll be creating it in our own community starting March.
Great, thank you, Ben. Well, now I'm really excited. You've gotten a taste of what's going to be happening at Destination Crenshaw. Now we get a chance to hear from our panelists about all of these amazing developments that are taking place. The first question I want to ask has to do with Destination Crenshaw as a model for similar initiatives in Los Angeles and other places, particularly as a data-driven community development project. And I want to direct this first question to Jason and then give the other panelists a chance to chime in. So Jason, how did the collection of data, including some of which was collected by UCLA students, help shape this project? And how does this research contribute to the vision for economic growth and environmental investment around Crenshaw? What lessons about data-informed projects can be drawn that can support other initiatives like this in other places?
Yeah, and thank you. And that was just a wonderful presentation. I just want to, acknowledge Maren, Ben, Joy, for all the hard work you do. And have done. I am very lucky to be here, and I am very lucky to be working in a result of the data that we've gathered, right? I think a lot of times typical projects kind of focus on these transactional metrics that are only numbers in a spreadsheet. Destination Crenshaw is working completely in the qualitative transformational space, right? So you don't get to 100 Black arts commissions just dealing in numbers, right? These are hearts and minds conversations that are really trying to move and participate in the movement for Black permanence in Crenshaw. And so that's essentially what our project is. It's a series of conversations that was, held in places that were comfortable and safe enough for people to be vulnerable about what they actually wanted instead of what they thought they could get, right? So when we land at a pink orb in Sankofa Park, that is actually showing the joy and the potential for people in space, right? And ultimately, that is spatial justice, right? Like that is ultimately what community development aspires to be. And I'm lucky to be able to execute it as a project.
Sure. And, history obviously, carries a lot of weight in terms of some of the ideas that were just expressed in the slides we saw. I mean, the Middle Passage, the transportation of Africans to the U.S. With the grass and the symbols and that type of thing. How did the history, people, you don't just make this stuff up. There's a history, there's research that went into this. What were the inspirations that some of the muralists, for example, who are going to be a part of this had, or the people who are making the sculptures and some of the other pieces that will be seen in the park? Was there sort of an opportunity to kind of meet with them to think about their ideas in relation to the themes that you knew you wanted to sort of project in Destination Crenshaw?
Yes, actually. The curatorial team in the very beginning had a wish list of artists that we had hoped would participate in this project. The boundaries or the types of qualifications that we wanted were those who had a connection to Los Angeles, who had an exhibition history, who, like I said, trained or grew up in Los Angeles and had a connection to the Black community. So all of that was taken into account in selecting the artists that we have doing the 3D sculptures that are going to be here. And they did really think about and really participated in that whole conversation about what it means to grow up here and be here and what that looks like, and talk about that equity in space and parks and things that we don't have. How many trees were lost when the space shuttle had to go from the airport to the science center? I mean, it really took out hundreds of trees because Crenshaw was the biggest, flattest street to get to. I mean, what does that do to a community like that? And having grown up in this area, I went to Crenshaw High School. I mean, I know what this community used to look like and what it feels like and what we are trying to get it back to. So yes, that was a very big part of the artists, and as you will see coming up this year, the muralists who are doing the project on, especially for the Crenshaw Wall, as well as, down at 59th Street and the other ones on 54th Street. These muralists are really thinking about our place, this Black place, and place making and establishing and holding on to, and just being ingrained in the city, just like any other community has in theirs.
Right. Ben or Maren, do you have any thoughts about that? Maren, I think you're muted.
She is. You're muted.
Gotcha, girl. Okay.
All right, so I will just speak until she gets it on, okay?
It's unmuted now, I think.
There you go.
You're on.
We can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. So my mother graduated from LA High, and I graduated from LA High. And so our family have been longtime residents of Los Angeles. And I felt very honored to be, chosen and to be part of this project. And the history of my my art has been fairly abstract, and I've been obsessed with this color pink. And so I decided, well, here's an opportunity to really use it. And I decided to do something quite simple with the orb. And I know that, maybe some people will look at this and not see maybe a kind of relevance for, so many of the issues that come up for us on a day-by-day basis. But my idea is that, we're all here, we're all participants, we're all part of life. And this is something joyous to celebrate. And that's what this round pink thing is. Right. And the fact that it's going to be placed in a grassy area, it's going to complement the color of the grass and the leaves of the trees around it. And I just want it to be a kind of joyous, quiet moment.
Great. Thank you. Ben?
For me, I'm from a family that were migrant farm workers. And so I see this as a part of the Southwestern migration, and this is the end of the migration. And I'm a cultural representation of that spirit that left Mississippi and showed up here, and in my unapologetically Black way. And that template is what I think built the Southwest. I know my father was a person that would slap the person in the face that didn't give him the respect, and if they didn't get the respect, they walked away and started Southwestern. So to me, this place represents the feeling of the expression of Black people really creating a world for themselves in this place. Yeah. So, and what Maren is doing, she's doing the same thing. She says, I'm a Black woman, I like that pink dot, and it's powerful. And watch it and meditate on it and see what you learn from yourself and what it tells you about yourself.
Absolutely. So what about Destination Crenshaw as a cultural space? There's something special and exciting about, bringing these objects into the community itself, as opposed to perhaps having it in a museum, and the fact that it is an outdoor museum. I mean, talk to me about the relevance of that and the potential for this as a model.
I'll just say real quick that when Janet Ken called me and told me that the focus was for the cultural arts, it really made me happy, because I couldn't think of a better way to generate funds for this community, because this community runs a lot on the creative energies that they've been able to create, but most of them internationally. So almost all of us who live and work in and around this area, we get a lot of love from our community, but a whole lot of love from the rest of the world. Yeah. And so I think that the rest of the world will finally get to see us, and it'll only take 200 or 300 steps as opposed to flying, or even they can drive through here and get the real smell of barbecue and the real sounds of jazz, and then go to the House of Blues and say, this doesn't work, we'll come back home. So that's the kind of thing that I like the most about what we were dreaming about, was we have to show our Blackness uncut, and it will win out all the time, as it has.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else on that?
Well, there's more to LA than movies.
Yeah, that is
and
true.
Black people are part of that.
That's right. That's right.
So, but there are other industries that are important now in Los Angeles. So
that's right.
And fine arts is one of them, I think. Yeah.
And I think that's important as well. I think to be able to bring art into the community, rather than it only be behind these doors or these walls, as accessible as the California African American Museum might be, or the new spaces that are coming up, be it the Lucas Museum or whatever. And even, you got LACMA, Hammer, everybody's reaching out. I'm trying to understand and relate to this community, all communities around the city. But with Destination Crenshaw, now they have a partner that they can really get to a level so that we're not just talking about, yeah, you want the fine arts and you want artists that have the training, but there's so much energy and so many young people who are doing these very creative things that if given the opportunity and gets the relationship with these institutions, who knows what they're going to do. So that's what I'm very excited about, in addition to what this does for the economy of the community, but really the space, to be able to have a park of that you just walk to. I mean, we don't have to go to Kenyahan Park is right there, but that's still a drive. But to be able for these children to walk to school, see a park, see a statue, contemplate, sit on, with some trees and some whatever California landscape material that we're going to have, really changes lives. And that's what I think is really going to be exciting about what the impact this is going to have.
Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about that's really exciting too is that the K line, as it comes out of the ground coming from LAX, the first thing you see, it's brought out before you is the whole the beginning of the Destination Crenshaw and all the way for that 1.3 miles until you get underground again. It's really exciting. So one of the things that we're really interested in at UCLA, of course, is engaging with the broader LA region, and Destination Crenshaw is something that's been really exciting to me personally for a long time, and certainly the type of thing we want to do. Going forward, how do we continue the relationship and forge new partnerships between public universities like UCLA with community engaged projects like Destination Crenshaw? What do we do to keep this going? Because as I understand it, this is a living project. It's not something that's static. It's going to continue to grow over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a regenerative project, right? And this is a reparative development project. So we will continue to work and move forward to figure out all the solutions that's needed to accomplish equity in our space, right? And to see spatial justice, it is a bit of an onion, right? So we're addressing public art and spatial justice visually right now with our aesthetics, but we need to continue the investment. We need to create the policies, and we need to create the social justice movement in order to provide the permanence and the justice for Black people in Los Angeles and in our space. So we'll continue doing those things. We already partner with the Engaging Communities program at UCLA. We have an intern right now who's from Compton that's working for us, researching the public art programs that are in Los Angeles so we can create the partnerships along Destination Crenshaw that'll create the cultural experience that these visitors will see. We're working with the social services and the Mass Department to do a longitudinal study around community aesthetics and belonging, because we know that we already have old people, but what if we have the most beautiful community possible, right? These Black people are going to live to their 200 because we finally have trees, we finally have public art, and we finally are not systemically putting them down by the blighted community that they've lived in, right? And so we're excited about these different opportunities of partnership with universities, and then ultimately creating the students at the schools that Joy was talking about to go to school and then come back to work and play and live in the community they grew up in, to not continuously have the talent leakage that the Black community has in Los Angeles, and to have that community create an ecosystem where we continue to reinvest with people and our financing and our investments.
Right.
And we also hope to have like the programming that brings people to Destination Crenshaw, because again, I went to UCLA. I know those students did not cross the 10 freeway, but they did not. I'm sorry.
No, we're changing all that. We're getting all over now.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, no, to get them to come and see and participate. That's what then gets people excited, and then they come in to be able to be supportive of our community as they pass through on the K line or the people from SC. We just got to get these students from the universities to come back and be supportive, and they can help. I mean, who comes to teach at View Park Prep or Crenshaw High School? We can get those students to understand how important their impact can be in this community.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, actually. And I want to invite the audience now to submit questions. We don't have a lot of time left, but we do want to get to some of your questions. There's one question in there about local schools. Someone says a native Black Angelino and local teacher This project brings me ultimate joy. I'm curious if there will be opportunities for students from surrounding schools to participate, to be a part of this vibrant living museum.
Yes.
I wanted to give a suggestion. I worked for about 15 years with CalArts, and we set up a program called the Community Partnership, which was, and we were the initial portions of really helping it run. And what it was we taught classes out at the university and brought our students in all the various cultural skills that that school had. And then they would work and build their resumes, build their syllabi around working in the community. I would suggest something like that because it could take the kids who are at UCLA. I went to school there. I had to fight to come to Leimert Park and go to Brockman Gallery and the Malcolm X Center. But if those things were an integral part of us engaging the community at that school, I think that would be a real plus. And I would say, look at the community partnership because it was a very good program.
Absolutely.
As far as the schools around the neighborhood, we will have opportunities not only at Crenshaw High School, but we'll have some projects at View Park Prep, but the middle school and the high school that students will participate in with the murals that are going on at those institutions. And there's other project on 54th and Crenshaw that is going to, an artist is using tile work on the building, and he wants to bring students so they understand how to do public art themselves and participate in doing his installation. So we're very much involved with the students in the neighborhood because it's important.
Absolutely. And this is a question for Jason. I think he's actually typing an answer to this question now, but he says, the question is, Destination Crenshaw is beautiful, a wonderful variety of artists. How will the project serve and be safe for residents, unhoused neighbors, and tourists? In addition to the artists, is there a defined percentage of construction project being done by BIPOC workers?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, you know, we have been asked by community through the community engagement process to actually privately maintain and operate the spaces along Destination Crenshaw. So this means that we will uphold and maintain the public art to the highest possible ability. It also means that we're have been in working relationship with the business owners and landowners along the corridor to really figure out how to best provide public safety and to really innovate public safety and space for Black people, right? So this is a conversation that we've been having and look forward to engaging the community on what exactly that means. Being a project that's unapologetically Black that launched prior to the murder of George Floyd, this was already a focus.
Yeah.
So now it is even more our charge and what we're going to do. And regarding the construction project, right now we're around 70% local hire for hours and around 90% local hire for wages. And that is around 15% Black workers on our project. We're pushing now to go above 50 now that the other parklets are going to come online. So we've been working closely with Second Call, our workforce development program partners, as well as PCL to really push this forward.
Very good. Yeah, here's another question, actually, an important question that I sort of gestured to in the very beginning. The question is, this is so beautifully curated. It is sure to excite and motivate engagement and investment. Are there thoughts about how to avoid displacement of residents, particularly those who live most precariously? It often comes with an increase in the value as measured by land prices, et cetera. It's a gentrification question. I mean, what is the sort of relationship between what's being done at Destination Crenshaw and that potential threat?
So I can take it.
Anyone
that one.
Want to take that?
We'll tackle it too.
I think I think a lot of times in our Black community, we have to make a decision between improvement and staying. So that is essentially why in the presentation it talks about growing where we're planted, right? And actually making a point of view to improve our place spatially, and having the conversation around why we have to make a choice, right? So that allows us to then have an advocating point with the data that we're gathering to be able to develop the policies that were needed to actually keep people in place. So we can't continue, really dancing around the topic, because ultimately, if we don't do this, then the Black community won't exist at all in LA. And I think that is actually the essential start of our conversation.
Okay. Anybody else want to pick that up?
Yeah, I think there's a thing that we have to look at is numbers. And the numbers it started where there were 0 Blacks in this neighborhood. And that was living wise or ownership wise. And now Leimert Park itself is 90% owned by Black community people, and we're only 8 to 11% of the population. So the surrounding community, of which I also live in, is really highly populated by Blacks. Yes, whites are coming in, but again, I think it's an improper use of our cultural wealth, and we have to teach people how to use cultural wealth.
Sure. So I've been given the time cue here that we're about out of time. Just want to thank all of our panelists for amazing presentations and insights about this exciting new project, and turn it over to Sylvia.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. This was such an amazing conversation, really exciting to see how this is developing, and looking forward to seeing it in person. I'm a new Angelino, and this is my first introduction, and I'm incredibly excited. I would like to thank the Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Darnell Hunt, Jason Foster, Joy Simmons, Ben Caldwell, and Maren Hassinger for really unraveling this project and making it come alive for all of us. And thank you for everybody that came here tonight and for staying with us until this late hours. We hope to see you very soon in programs in person and online hosted by the Fowler, and looking forward to meeting you all at the Sankofa Park very, very soon.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.